I just saw a post on social media, and I think what I'll start to do is I'll start to regularly just update you guys whenever I see a post that really just strikes me and is on my heart. So I wanted to talk to you all about depression, anxiety. What usually happens with mental illness is usually something that can be found hereditary. It can be found in your background, in your DNA. It's something that you can inherit. It is also something that can come on all of a sudden, and you may not recognize the signs. So I think it's really important that we start to talk about this, especially in entrepreneurship, especially for African Americans, especially for just people anywhere you live, anywhere you are. It's really important. So for me, I battled with postpartum depression after the birth of my child for several years. I battled with postpartum depression for about 5 years or so. And really, I didn't recognize the signs at all. I just went through it. And it's a funny thing about depression. You don't know you're actually going through it until you know you're going through it. So even having people tell you that you are depressed, having a doctor acknowledge it and give you a diagnosis of depression, even that isn't enough to really acknowledge it because you're going through self-stigma. So I wanted to break down self-stigma. Self-stigma is where you tell yourself that this isn't really happening, where you basically try to convince yourself that you're not going through this, you don't know what's going on, this isn't really happening. And so I wanted to give you all a couple of different clues and things that you can look for maybe in your own life or in the lives of people that you love, that you can help them and help them heal through this difficult time in your life. Because like I said, I'm going to only speak to depression and anxiety for myself. When you're going through depression and anxiety, you don't know that you're actually going through it. You just know that there's a feeling and you can't quite put your finger on it. Negatively to yourself. So you'll say things like, I can't do anything right. I'm a total failure. You no longer enjoy things that you used to enjoy. You either sleep too much or you don't sleep at all. So it's either of the two. Or you eat too much or you don't eat at all. So it's either of those two. It really is individualized. I will speak for myself. For me, I didn't eat. Actually, I didn't eat at that time. I didn't eat at all. So I got really, really skinny. My appearance started to drop. I didn't take, I took showers, but very sparingly. I started to lose, my hair. I started to not dress up. I didn't want to go and be around people. And I really didn't know what was wrong. And with depression, what happens is that it's an uncontrollable pain, and it's a pain that you can't describe, an undescribable pain. So it's a pain that you can't quite put your finger on as to tell someone else like what it feels like. You can't describe it. There's nothing in this world that can describe it for you. It's just something that there's something wrong. And at that point in time is when you know you need help. And it usually is someone else that points it out to you. For me, it was my son. It was my son coming to me and going, Mom, you're always sad. You're always angry and yelling. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm happy. What are you talking about? And he said, no, you know what? You're always sad. And for him to say it at that point in time, I could have turned into stone at that point. Just him worrying about me, that's not his job. It's not his job to worry about me. So that's what woke me up out of it. And that was only temporarily. It woke me up enough for me to say, I need to seek help and I need to find out what's really going on. So what happens in the brain with depression is that your neurons actually aren't firing anymore. They're actually just staying in a centerpiece. If you go to Google, go ahead and Google it because I don't have my computer up here. But go to Google and type in depression in the brain, what the brain looks like. And go to images, click on the images there, and you'll see the activity is very limited. So that's why you can't access your emotions. So people that go through depression, you'll see they can smile, but they won't be as happy as they used to be. So if you're seeing that change in people you may know or even in yourself, then you may want to consult a therapist, but definitely go and seek help. Because that is a clear sign. If you don't enjoy things that you used to enjoy, if you find that you have this pain that you can't quite put your finger on, you can't quite explain what it is, you can't quite pull yourself out of bed at times in that moments, because it can come in ebb and flows, right? One day you can be totally up, you'll be good, you'll do everything, and you'll kind of be in this moment, but you still won't quite be able to pinpoint a happiness moment. And that's an indicator. All right. So that's depression. Now, with anxiety, what's usually happening with depression is a sadness. You're upset. You're just feeling down. You're feeling like, woe is me. Why me? Why me? Why me? Right. And then that feeling becomes so intense that you just want it to stop. And that's why a lot of people usually go into a boast, I can't talk right now, but they usually look at suicide as an option because you can't explain it to anyone. It isn't like a broken bone where you can say, see, look, my bone is broken. My arm isn't, working properly. It's inside your brain. It's inside here. So how do you explain that to someone? How do you let them know that that's happening when you yourself can't even see it? So it's really hard to explain and to put it into words to tell someone else what you're going through. And usually the pain, you don't want to explain it to anyone. You don't want to talk to anyone about it because you're afraid. So that self-stigma creeps in and you're going, okay, fine. You know what? I'm just going to handle this myself. And that usually, when a suicide becomes an option. So don't allow that to be an option. It is never an option. There is people out there to help you, and you are not the only one going through it, believe me. So then let's move to anxiety. So anxiety usually creeps up when you are worrying about something either in your past or in your present. You really need to find a therapist, find a psychologist, a preacher, whoever you feel comfortable with speaking to, a counselor, so on and so forth, and speak to that person so that they can really ask you the questions you need to be asked to bring it up. Because usually what will happen is we'll suppress it. And that was what was happening for me. For me, I suppressed a lot of things that I had gone through in my teenage years that I never spoke about, I just didn't want to deal with. I wanted to act like it never happened. And it took for my son to see it in me, for me to acknowledge, you know what, this did happen. It wasn't okay. However, I forgive this individual and I am moving forward. And that is a huge step in itself. I'm not saying it's easy because it is definitely not. However, it is something that has to be done in order for you to live a life of just being who you are and who you're meant to be. But without going through that, I definitely wouldn't be here speaking to you, right? So the thing is, you have to acknowledge that you are worthy of help and you have to accept help. I think the biggest thing in our community is that we won't accept it. There's help out there, but we won't accept it. There are support groups. There are 800 numbers that we can call, but we won't do it because you get so comfortable in that mindset and you get so comfortable with the way that it's always been that you feel like it can never change. And I think I am living proof that it can change, and I'm living proof that you can do it. And you just need to move forward, and you just need to find the individuals that'll help you do it and accept the help, because you are worthy and you do deserve the life that you always wanted. You deserve it. All right. So with that being said, wishing you wellness in life and in business. I felt like that needed to be said. Thank you so much for joining me.